the judiciary. So if there must be rule of law and good governance, then the law courts have to be effective. But we all know the situation and the circumstance of our law courts today. I'd like to start this way. Every Nigerian knows that Nigeria as a country lacks good governance. There's no doubt about that. There's no good governance in Nigeria for a very long time. And I'd like to quote a statement made by our brother, Chinua Achebe. He made a statement in 1984, and he said, and I quote, "There's nothing basically wrong with the Nigerian character. There's nothing wrong with the Nigerian land, climate, water, air, or anything else. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or the inability of its leaders to rise to their responsibility to the challenge of personal example, which is the hallmark of true leadership." Presently, we have a person contesting for the presidency of this country who has demonstrated what good governance is all about in his capacity as former governor of Anambra State. And in coming out, he says, go and verify. That's a personal example. Go and verify. And to demonstrate his capacity to introduce and entrench good governance at the federal level, he says again, let's take back our country. These are very powerful social media hashtags, so to speak. And when he says, let's take back our country, what is he saying? He's putting the responsibility on us. Every other speaker have identified collective responsibility, general participation in democracy as the foundation and the building block of good governance. Looking at good governance from the perspective of rule of law, we understand that there are several segments or characteristics of good governance, but I will look at it from the perspective of participatory democracy. I look at it from the perspective of election, free and fair election, which is very critical, and finally the role of the judiciary. Participatory democracy requires every one of us, as we are now, to make sure that we are playing our role. And I'm so glad that right about now, Nigeria is about 70%, and by next year it will get closer to 100% of people supporting Obi. What is going on now, what is going to happen in 2023 is not just an election, but an electoral revolution. That's what I call it. Electoral revolution. Can you imagine people in the north, Okada drivers, moving everywhere and say, Obi? I think Obi is a man that God has prepared for this time. I remember that song that says, the most popular song when I was in secondary school was Obi, Kereke Obi. I saw some soldiers singing it. People are beginning to replay it. So God has prepared him. And what again? Like the earlier speaker said, it is the turn of our people to present the leader of this country. And they are denying us. But God is a mysterious God. The cabals decided, and in their secret chambers, that they will not give it to the Igbo. But look at what is happening. God himself will put an Igbo man. I said it more than 20 years ago, that until an Igbo man ascends the leadership of this country, Nigeria will not know good governance. The way God raised Moses, he's raising Obi to move us forward. So I will encourage us to understand that what is going on is not just an election. It's a revolution, and everybody must participate. It's like door-to-door evangelism. And we are going to do our level best to ensure that we play our part in that direction. So we talk about electoral, free and fair elections. And that's why we may have problems. But that is if we allow it. Because a revolution does not recognize an existing structure. It throws it down. They're talking about election, about structure. That Obi doesn't have a structure. I like that poster. I am the structure. That's one. The structure. We have to be the structure. He has the structure. We are going to that structure. We start upon that structure to ensure that we throw it, but it's not easy to do that fight. You must understand that. It's not easy. I pointed out in my paper, I said, what is surprising but not too surprising is that the forces of the old school, or old school of as it was in the beginning, so shall it continue, are binding themselves together to continue the status quo of bad governance. But we're not going to allow it. We will throw down their structure. You talked about taking Buhari to court for not having certificates. What of the kind of APC? We don't talk bad about that. We are asked to do so, but they will have to pick the facts and have to speak to the facts. He doesn't have a certificate. Even his deputy doesn't have. Here we have a man whose certificates are verifiable. And we are here making arguments. This is starting on my I'm sorry. We can just it, please. I can just adjust a little bit. So we have to make sure that we cooperate with what God is doing to make sure that Obi is enthroned. And how do I mean? I like what happened in Osun State. There was a particular polling unit so ahead that after the elections, the INEC was supposed to transmit the result, and the particular polling officer said that there was no network. Before 2 minutes, more than 20% donated their distance. That is it. That is what we must learn to do. Participatory. We cannot allow INEC to make it to do. You know, of course, we know that it was INEC that denied Jonathan the presidency then. It was INEC that denied our man as vice president in 2020. But this is not going to be business as usual. And if it's going to succeed, it depends less on Obi, but more on us. We have to understand that it's an assignment, it's a commitment. It's what we have to commit ourselves to and ensure that it is done. Prayers, my sister. Prayers. We pray and we also take action. Get our PVC. Now let me tell you something, please. I think I remember it. We have to take steps to enlighten and educate ourselves on how to use that machine. Because it is now what I'm hearing in the they are going door to door, them how to use it. That is one. Then secondly, many people know Obi and desire for him to be the president, but few know his party. I have a particular paper where I belong to, where they said that in Sierra Leone in Kenya, when they put the ballot paper, they put the name of the party, the logo, and the picture. I've taken it upon myself. We have the Southeast Lawyers Forum that we're going to campaign and see if we can champion to ensure that INEC does that. But a situation where you have APC as number one, it is easy to say when people are going to the polling booth, the first party is APC. These are little things that may seem not to matter, but they determine to a large extent the result of the elections. We allow INEC to do what they usually do. We make sure that we vote and our vote count, and they transmit it, and the results are announced. And we are sure that our candidate is getting what he's supposed to get. Then, the role of the court in election petitions. Mama laughed, but she knows. I've used cases to illustrate that, which we all know, the case of it. If I want clear and clear, they went to did abracadabra. It is in such situations that you know the power of the court in installing good governance. If the court fail, or if they're intimidated, or if they are bribed, they are compromised, then it would turn the mandate of the people and give it to another person. If there must be good governance, whether in the judiciary, whether in the executive, or the legislature, or in the executive, or in the judiciary, it starts with the people. And when does it start? During the elections. Because if a good person who understands, who has the fear of God, like you said, and understands what good governance is all about, and knows what he's supposed to do is there, then every other thing, like you said, the anointing flows from the head to trickle down from it to every other aspect of it. But if they put a person, like the person we have here now, everything will be messed up. Sometime 2-3 years ago, they went in and arrested some judges. Of course, nobody's above the law, we know, but not in that manner. You don't go and arrest them. What were they trying to do? To intimidate them, to harass them, to make sure that they always do what they want them to do. Then they removed a whole chief justice of the federation unceremoniously, and do what? Put their person. I don't think rule of law is what we do every day as lawyers, both between government and government, government and individuals, and between individuals. So you see a situation where you know that this is what the justice of the case is. The law is very clear, the facts are very settled, and the application of the law to the facts are very clear. But then when judgment is read, it is turned upside down. I'll give us another example. When they did what they called Python dance, ADF went to court. The provisions of the Constitution are very clear. The circumstances in which the president can declare state of emergency or send troops to a part or portion of the country. You must pass through the National Assembly. We made all the arguments, stated all the facts, argued all the law, and what did the judge say? And then he gave judgment. He happened to be from over there. He said that it was within the exclusive, unquestionable power of the president to deploy troops to any part of the country, irrespective of what the facts are. He turned the law upside down. That is wrong application of rule of law. Why was that? Because the head is corrupt. And where the head is bad, nothing happens. Everything becomes useless. So we must make sure that we do all we ought to do to make sure that our man enters there. Then, also is another example of another case, this time around December State. In 2015, I think 2019 or thereabout, they had an election, and Oyetola was declared the winner. Then Adeleke went to court. It was before a tribunal. Tribunal looked at all the circumstances, all the figures and everything, and decided that Adeleke was the rightful person that won that election. But the law, of course, allows you that if you're already a sitting governor and you appeal against a judgment that was against you, you can sit in office until the appeal is determined. So Oyetola went on appeal and won the appeal on mere useless technicality. The same court and the same rule of law would tell you that you do not sacrifice substantial justice on the altar of technicality. But when it suits them, they will depend on technicality to overturn the will of the people. And God is not happy. But presently, what happened? They had another election, and the same person who won before, who they denied, the mandate of the people was restored unto him, vindicating the judgment of the tribunal court. So, what am I saying in effect? That in this coming election, where we're making efforts to put Obi, there's a level of victory you have. There's a number of votes you have. It cannot be altered. And that is what should be aiming at. A situation where if there are 10,000 votes, for instance, if Obi scores 9,000, how can it be overturned? Even if INEC does all the abracadabra and overturns it, and we go to court, we win. But if we have a slight or slim margin, if it's not a landslide, and they go to court, it will be easy for them to use money, our money, to mess up the rule of law, and deny us of good governance. I didn't have time to start going to the divisions of good governance and rule of law because we all know what that means. But the truth of the matter is that where there's rule of law, properly so-called, properly practiced, there will be good governance. And the foundation of good governance and rule of law is what? We. Nigeria has been denied good governance for a very long time. This is our opportunity to ensure that we do all we can to have good governance in Nigeria and have rule of law practiced extensively in this country. Thank you very much.